So I get tons of questions on a daily basis about the different types of conditions, and I figure the best way to kind of address the questions that you guys have been throwing at me is to draw something out for you. So, generally speaking, there's three types of conditions that we deal with. Okay, we've got condition precedent, we've got true condition precedent, and then we've got the condition subsequent. Now, what does all this mean? First and foremost, condition precedent and true condition precedent, the distinction is the word true, okay? I want you to appreciate that both a condition precedent and a true condition precedent require positive affirmation. So these types of conditions you can either fulfill because you've satisfied the condition, but a true conditions precedent specifically reserves the client that it's afforded to the ability to waive a condition. Okay, so it gives you some discretion. Now, with a true condition precedent, there's no waiver provision, which means that you can only really fulfill it. Okay, a condition subsequent, on the other hand, is a passive condition. And basically here, the understanding is no news is good news. Meaning if you haven't heard from me within the time frame prescribed in the provision, assume that the deal is firm and binding from the beginning. Now, most of the realtors that are working are using condition precedents. Why? Because, well, we want discretion. If I've got a condition, for example, for financing, and I win the lottery, I'm not going to send you a notice of fulfillment because I haven't fulfilled that condition. I'm basically bypassing my right or waiving my right to that condition. So you can submit a waiver here. A true condition precedent, on the other hand, requires the fulfillment of a condition. So an example of a true condition precedent might be with an assumed mortgage situation. In that particular situation, the seller saying, you take over my mortgage, you'll benefit from a better interest rate usually. And the seller benefits because they're saving the interest rate differential or the 3-month interest penalty usually. And so it kind of sweetens the pot between the buyer and the seller. And obviously for the seller, they don't want to be subject to those penalties, which is why they're requiring it. So a condition like an assumed mortgage clause would definitely be written as a true condition precedent, whereby if the bank doesn't approve of the client being able to assume the mortgage, the deal would fall through. Now, condition subsequent, like I said, assumes that no news is good news. From the time that the deal is done, assume that the deal is firm and binding. And unless you hear otherwise, by virtue of a notice of termination, the contract is automatically fulfilled. Now, tips for realtors. First and foremost, usually you're going to want to draft your conditions as a condition precedent because you want that discretion. If you win the lottery, if something changes where you don't need to fulfill the condition, you can go ahead and waive that condition rather than have to fulfill it. There are certain situations in certain marketplaces where, for example, the client has not obtained an approval from the bank, but says, you know what, Ricky, I understand the risk. I'm going to sign off on Form 127, acknowledging that I've got informed consent to the fact that I have the right to obtain financing and make my offer conditional. Notwithstanding me not getting my firm approval in my hand, I'm making a business decision and I want to firm up this deal because I've got a plan B or a plan C with private lending, or I can get a gift, or I've got money that I've kind of put set aside so that if, for example, my major financial institution drops the ball and I can't close the deal, I'll still have the proceeds to go ahead and close the deal. Situation like that, I'm going to use Form 127, have them acknowledge the fact that there is a condition that they're going to go ahead and remove from the agreement, notwithstanding it not being fulfilled, and I will send a simple waiver. Okay. As a realtor, you always want a condition precedent or a true condition precedent because you want a positive affirmation. At each step of the transaction, you want the client to sign off on the fact that they are prepared to move forward. So client says, I don't need financing. Okay. Sign off on 127, send a waiver, and that's the end of it. Client says, I've got the financing. Usually send a waiver anyway. There's a lot of talk about whether you should be submitting a notice of fulfillment or a waiver. And I generally am of the side that it's better not to fulfill a condition. It's better to waive, although both documents have the same effect from a contractual perspective. You do want to qualify your unique situation with your attorney, and don't qualify this as legal advice in that situation. But I'm usually an advocate for a waiver rather than a notice of fulfillment, even when the condition is being fulfilled. I'll still use the waiver form. Okay. So that positive affirmation you want in that form, because the client's basically acknowledging the fact that they're ready to proceed with the transaction and to move forward to the next step to firm up the transaction. Condition subsequent, on the other hand, because no news is good news, it automatically assumes that the deal is firm and binding from the beginning. Now, that can become problematic because if on the last minute of the last day, at the last hour, the client says, my financing is improved, I need out of the deal, Well, if you're too late with that notice of termination, the contract is already firm and binding, and that puts you in a very precarious situation. And then the client's going to come back to you and lose their mind on you. So you're going to want to make sure that with specific types of clauses that are really important and fundamental to the deal getting completed, like financing and inspection, things like that, you're not going to want to use a condition subsequent. You're going to want firm affirmation from your client by either a notice of fulfillment or a waiver. Ricky Rathore here again, REMAX Metropolis, real estate lawyer at Rathore Baig Professional Corporation. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.